Hello. Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. I don't like to talk about controversial topics necessarily. I will rarely in this forum go into subjects such as politics or religion unless it is strictly in the context of a game setting. But I do want to address a something. It's game related. It's nothing that many people might even consider controversial. It might be. If the discussion in the comments gets lively, then so be it. That's on my head. In your traditional role-playing game setting, you have one person who is running the game. The game master, the dungeon master, the storyteller. Different systems have different names for them. I tend to genericize it down to game master, because that's essentially what's going on. And the title sounds dominating and imposing. And it can be, I suppose, depending on the person taking it. The game master has a rough job at the table. They've got the most work to do. They've got the most shoes to fill and hats to put on. While all the players at the table have the task of making a character, making sure all of the numbers are right and they're familiar with that character's capabilities, then they play that character, they flesh that character out, they give that character a certain amount of life in making decisions based on that character's values. The game master is the person who lays out what scenario those characters find themselves in, determines what difficulties the players or characters are going to encounter, and is everything that the players' characters see, hear, smell, taste, what any of their other senses tell them. They arbitrate the perceptions of everything there. They may have a story in their head when they start. They're not going to keep it because, well, player characters will destroy any story in the head of any game master. They may have an endpoint they're heading towards or a campaign that they want to go on, and maintaining that and bringing that to the table is the game master's job. That seems like enough. In many settings, it is. In your convention setting where you're running a 4-hour session for people that you've never seen before and may never see again, sure, that's plenty. That's a lot to do. Running a good, concise 4-hour session is an art form. Running a good, concise 3-hour session, more so. I run games at the local game store, and those I get technically 3 hours. We usually start a little bit late and we usually go a little bit long, so 3 hours-ish. And people show up, they get thrown into the game, they have a time, and they leave. It's not too difficult. Established groups and people who run regular games. I've got regulars at my game. I've got a great table. And people come, people go. Some people can show up all the time. Some people can't show up all the time. But it's been just a routinely really good table. There are regulars. There are new regulars all the time. I had to split it into a couple of games a while ago because the table filled up. I've got a number of regular weekly or semi-weekly games. Bi-weekly, every other week. And those are people who show up on a regular basis. Friends who come in and sit down, and one of them will run or I'll run, and you see those people all the time. And when you get to situations like that, the game master, whether they want it or not, will find themselves having another job or several. It is not in the rule book. Not in most of them. It isn't written down. It's not something that you'd expect to have to do when you pick up pencils and dice and make robots fight zombies. It's worse than that. The term master in all of these things, game master, dungeon master, storyteller, gets a little bit different, but implies a certain amount of authority. And the game master does have a certain amount of authority at that table. They are judge and adjudicator. They are the person who is responsible for interpreting the rules and their interpretation of the rules, perhaps with some discussion, but almost certainly based on their final decision, that interpretation is what is used. It is a position of authority. You are telling people at that table from time to time what to do. Roll these dice. Make this save. Make this note. You might want to write this down. Is anyone keeping track of treasure? Because here comes some. In the course of normal role-playing activities, this is fine. Some people are better at it than others. Some people are better players. Some people are better game masters. These are skills that can be acquired. There's a skill set. Like I've said before, I got an associate's in communications, and in the process, I was taking classes that let me game master better. Organizational dynamics and whatnot. This is if everything flows smoothly. And I'm not talking about the game flow. I'm talking about the people flow. The game flow gets hicked up. Oh, they went left instead of right, or someone's character died, or blew that save, and you really needed to make that. That's part of the process of the game. You expect to happen. You have an entire book that gives you chances to succeed and chances to fail, and you roll with either of those. Nah. The problems that I'm talking about are the problems that can only happen because role-playing games are games that you play with other people. People who have spent 6 days or so, maybe more, doing other things, having their lives. They weren't playing this game in the morning when they woke up. They came to your game eventually. And what has happened since the last time you closed the books and put away the dice, and when you open the books and get the dice out again, is that thing called life, and it is full of difficulties from time to time. People don't stop existing in the time between games. The characters might, the players don't. And so people come to that table with some baggage sometimes. They are having relationship problems. They are having work problems. They are having problems with where they're living, the situation of their life. They get sick. They have emotional difficulties. This happens. And they come to that table, and there's often a host, the person whose place you're gathering in, and there is the game master. And sometimes both are the same person. And now there is a person at your table who has a problem. There is a tendency for us to want to say, I know you're having a bad week, but let's put our baggage aside. Let's just have the game and see if we can't just have a good time tonight. Which is one solution. If that person is having problems and they have come to this game, that is one thing that they are after. They are absolutely there so that they can be someplace else. Role-playing games are wonderful escapism. And they're going to roll some dice and they're going to kick an orc right in the head exactly the way they need to. Or not, because you don't roll dice when everything is certain. Who watches that person's emotional state? Who decides at some point maybe we need to take a little break and takes them aside and says, hey, do you need to talk? That is not the game master's job. There is no book that says that is the game master's job. There is nothing written that tells the game master that's what you have to do. Some games may have notes around that issue, and I applaud those games. In my experience, and this is just me, I'm not going to try and speak for an industry or an entire hobby. In my experience, someone who comes to your game hurting is there to not hurt for a while. And the person who is running that game is responsible for that game and those people. And the person who is running the game has also had 6 days of life happening to them, and relationships and jobs and whatnot. So it's not like the person who is running the game is automatically showing up as this paragon of stability. Lord knows I have never been a paragon of stability. I have had the good fortune to be in the right place at the right time when someone at my table needed a little help. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can slow the game. It can end the session. It can make the process of playing that game drag a little bit. I'm not going to suggest it is the responsibility of the game master to see if someone at his table is hurting. Not their character, not the player agonizing over what is happening to a character, but something a little bit deeper than that. When life keeps poking that person in the back of the head and they can't center themselves, they can't escape from it. It takes experience to see that. It takes having gone through a lot of that yourself to see that sometimes. And having seen it at the table, if you are the kind of game master who can and will look for that, you may not know everyone at that table. You may know them all as players. You may not know what they do for a living. You may not know what their marital status is or what they're going through. But if you see someone hurting at that table, I feel it's my responsibility as a game master to suggest a 5-10 minute break. Stand up and stretch for a few minutes, and you approach that person, know them or not, and ask them if there's anything you can do. You might not be able to do anything. There might not be a single thing that you can do. But you noticed, and you're asking, is there something I could do to help? Would you like to talk about it? Take a few minutes. It doesn't take long, often. Sometimes that is the break the person needs to let you know they can't get in the game. And you can let them know, write your character out for a little while. You can observe if you want to, or if you gotta go take care of stuff, go take care of stuff. Your spot will still be open. You need to make a phone call. Is there someone you need to talk to? Do what you need to do. If you have access to some bottles of water, it's really good to have some bottles of water at your table. The game store sells bottles of water. I usually get a few. And someone having a problem, amazing what a little simple hydration will do. Or just the offer of it. The game master has a position of authority, and there are a number of different ways to use that authority. I personally have found that using that position of authority to help someone who is hurting, it might not be the most involved session you have ever run. It might not be the magnum opus of charging the castle and killing the dragon, but you will have a stronger group for it. You'll have friends. And the other side of that, like I said, I'm a person. I close those books. I put away my dice, which often takes a while because I've got a lot of them. I exist between the end of that game and the beginning of the next. I have bad days. I show up to that game having had a bad day, particularly if I've taken a couple of sidebars with folks to see if there's anything I can do to help. I find I open my books and I get my dice out and I try to get my head in the game. And someone asks me if there's anything they can do to help. I was thinking I could run a one-off. Would you like to take a break? You want to make a character and or what do you think? We could do a card game tonight. There's a lot of card games here. I've got a copy of Munchkin. We can play that. Giving you a week off? Or just letting you talk some stuff out? Role-playing games are a social activity. And as sterile an environment as some people like to have, the convention 4-hour quick session is a really good example of a relatively sterile thing. I had regulars at conventions after a while. And entire tables of newbies. People who either haven't played the game or haven't played a game with me, and those are fun. Those are fine. It's when the game master exercises a little empathy and compassion that you elevate that from a sterile table of people rolling dice to a group. A group with a capital G. Gaming group with 2 capital G's. I talk a lot about how amazing the gaming groups I have recently been involved in are. And they are absolutely amazing. The Manhattan Beach group, I love that group. They are fast and they are brilliant, and there is no problem that I can put in front of them. They will not work their way around. The Wednesday night group, they are funny and witty and just brilliant in their conception and all the different skills that get brought in as from life as actual reference for what's happening there. The Tuesday night group at the Game Chest, I lucked into some amazing people, and that is a great table. I have never seen a group. 3 hours they got to play this game, half an hour to figure out how we should approach that door. The fights often don't last nearly as long as the agonizing over taking this questionable action. Great groups. All of them gaming groups with 2 capital G's. And I'm not going to say that is my desire as a game master to be attentive and compassionate and helpful to the people, not just the players. But those groups are full of people who have that attitude. You show up and you don't just pull out books and dice. How you doing? What's going on? How was your week? What's happening? You sit and you listen for a little while. You communicate. You socialize. And that has a number of effects. One, you're having a bad day. There is very few situations you can get into that is better than that gaming group with a capital G that listens and understands and empathizes and might have a couple of solutions for you. Whether they work or not, they try. 2, and this is surprising, those groups have better games. Even if the player characters start off a campaign without having met one another first, you will find no faster group cohesion, no more tightly knit groups, no better examples of team tactics and communication than in those groups that are gaming groups. We tend to play with our friends. You want to put together a game, you call your friends. You get online with your friends. Hey, I got a game, I want to run it. What do you think? You might have a group of people around that routinely get those requests from you. You might want to start something else up, and hey, I got some friends. You guys want to play a game? And when you do that, you have a tendency to, we'll socialize for a little bit, and we'll talk. How you doing? Everything okay? Can I help? It's when the new people get into those groups. It's when you have a group of new people. These people have never met, or a couple of them might have met. There might be some folks in there associated, some folks not. Some folks who've never done this before. Some folks who really want to learn how, but always thought it was daunting. And you got some choices about how you run it. Nice and sterile, nice and flat, a little educational. Compassionate and helpful. I cannot stress enough how those qualities, they don't necessarily make me a better game master. If the task of the game master is to get the game from the beginning of the session to the end of the session, and the campaign from the start of the story to the end of the story. But the game master can be so much more. Not that anyone at that table can't take on part of that role. Any player can see someone having a problem. Can we have a couple minutes? Can we take a break? How you doing? Everything okay? But the game master is the person that everyone is looking at, and the game master is the person whose job it is to be looking at everyone anyway. You will learn to gauge people running games. That's just one of those skills you pick up. Does he think he's got a chance to do this? Is she bluffing? Do I think they're actually going to throw that, or should I have a backup ready just in case they don't? You learn. And along with that comes the perception not of the character's actions and mental state, but also the players. I feel it is my responsibility to be what I can to those people at the table as far as helping them through what difficulties are interfering with their night. Maybe more than that if they ask for help. There's not a lot I can do. I can listen. I occasionally have bits of advice. I share some of them here from time to time. You might have noticed. I am not going to suggest that it is the responsibility of every game master to do this. It's okay if a game master doesn't. I'm just suggesting that you will find tremendous benefits to your game and to the group as a whole if you do. It's not the only way to benefit the group. It is not the only way to run a game. It is not the only way to operate a group. There is no one way. I am saying it is my feeling of my responsibility there. And I'm suggesting you give it a try. If you think about it, I'm willing to bet that if you routinely run games, you've already been doing this without knowing that is what you've been doing. Because that's one of the things that the position of Game Master tends to carry with it. It certainly can. And to those compassionate, helpful Game Masters, keep up the good work. The hobby thrives because there are caring people in it. We are a social group, and those things that lubricate the wheels of social operation, difficult as it can be in today's society, are what we can do to help. Well, thank you for following me along on this particular rant. Controversial-ish. I know not everybody shares my views on this, and that is perfectly fine. It takes all kinds. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you have your own views on helping people at the table through the role of being the game master, or if you have experiences of doing this or times it might have helped, leave me a comment. Anything that you would like to see me talk about, or subjects you want me to cover, leave me a comment. I'll love getting a comment. You'll love leaving me one. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, why not? My channel is awesome. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you do, hit the little notification bell so that you're alerted as soon as my videos come out. If you'd like to help out in a slightly more personal way, I invite you to hit me up my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/DeCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.